allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Additions and corrections to the agenda. Are there any additions or corrections? Seeing none, we'll move on to oral communications. Anyone wishing to address the board on the consent calendar, informational items, closed session items, or matters not listed on the agenda may do so during oral communication. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. The public may comment on any other items at the time they are presented to the board. Public comment?
Dan Turner, Monterey. The concept of domestic tranquility is so important that it's mentioned in the preamble to the Constitution. We've had very little of it around here lately, and we're about to have a lot less of it. And I place the responsibility for that unfortunate situation in which we find ourselves as a community directly at the feet of the Gang of Four, as I affectionately refer to the 4 members of this board who last were still firmly in favor of keeping Cal-Am, and just as firmly opposed to establishing a community-owned water system. Mendacity and disingenuousness are words that we need in the English language to describe situations where people's professed intentions are used to obscure their true motives. The excuses used by the majority of this board
Mr. Turner,
refusing
your microphone, little button to press. There we go.
Better?
Yeah.
Yes? Would you like me to start again? The excuses used by the majority of this board for refusing to proceed with a study needed to determine if it is in the public interest to replace Cal-Am with a community-owned district, as laid out in the Water Management District's Measure H2O frequently asked questions, could have been written by Cal-Am's public relations company. At least numbers 1 through 4 could have. I wouldn't be surprised if numbers 5 and 6 were added only after someone looked at the first 4 points and said, this looks like it's been written by Cal-Am's public relations company. Points 1 through 4 were exactly what Cal-Am's attorney told you as he lectured you in an extraordinarily condescendingly arrogant manner about how he was going to spank your little tushies if you try to get rid of Cal-Am. Other elected officials to whom you've spoken in that manner have been angered and felt insulted. I wonder if any of you felt that way. Cal-Am has successfully divided our community, as in divide and conquer, by giving businesses decidedly lower rates than regular residents when it dropped the tiered rates for businesses back in 2013. Large hotels and restaurants can now use unlimited amounts of water at one low rate, equivalent to residents' tier 1 rate. Not only is that so unfair that a blind man could see it, but as a result, the business community will now fight with residents to the death to retain Cal-Am. If you really believed what you say in items 1 through 4, you'd be eager to proceed with a study, because if it showed that it did indeed cost too much to purchase Cal-Am, that would be the end of this issue. But you don't believe the study will show that. You know the study will show that a community-owned system would be much less expensive for us than remaining with Cal-Am, and for whatever reasons you truly have for wanting to remain with Cal-Am, you refuse to proceed with the study. It is shameful to hide your true motives behind excuses like it being irresponsible to spend the money, about $10 to $15 per customer, to do the study. You could have avoided this sort of a showdown that will rip our community apart and leave wounds that will take years to heal. Your disingenuous mendacity is exceeded only by your truly extraordinary failure of leadership and vision in this, the most serious crisis facing our community.
Thank you. Anyone else for public comment?
Good evening. My name is Marlena Brown, and I wanted to introduce myself. I'm the new Community Planning and Liaison Officer for Naval Support Activity Monterey. A couple of your faces are actually familiar from other meetings I've attended. I am new to the Peninsula, so I'm gathering a lot of information right now, but I wanted to make myself available and introduce myself to you. If you have any questions or can't get a hold of my boss, Captain Rich Wiley, you can call me. I'm happy to answer any questions and lead you in the right direction.
Thank you. Anyone else for public comment?
Good evening, Michael Bear, City of Monterey, not the city. I live in the city of Monterey, but I don't work for the city. I'm passing around a letter that appeared in the commentary that appeared in the Herald on Saturday by Rick Hoyer, I believe is how you pronounce his name. And he had some things that, to say about the Water Management District, not all of which are true. And I just want to say welcome to the battle. You know, this information, we've been subject to misinformation about Public Water Now and about this effort and what we're up to, et cetera. I hope you will respond and not just take it. It'll be interesting to see. And then the other thing I just wanted to add, it's an email that I sent to Mr. Stolt earlier, looking at the cost savings of public financing versus corporate financing of major infrastructure projects, such as a desal plant. One thing there's no debate over is we're going to have a Monterey pipeline. It's 90% installed. They have to make a bridge. It's estimated to cost $50 million. CalAm says it's going to be done on time and on budget. Well, how much does financing $50 million cost? Public bonds are generally available for about 4%. There's state revolving funds for less. There's potential for grants for less. But even if you say we're going to fund the whole thing with a public bond at 4%, the interest cost is in the neighborhood of $88 million. The CalAm currently gets a return of 8.41% return, the combination of debt and equity, and they've been asked to have that raised by another roughly half point, but that hasn't been approved yet. At 8.41%, this is a bond amortized over 30 years. The total is $139 million, roughly, which is about $51 million difference between the financing of the Monterey pipeline publicly versus privately. And as I mentioned to Dave, you could buy a whole nother pipeline and have $1 million left over for incidentals, the difference. So the people need public water. The cost of water is enormous, and the cost of not going public is criminal.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Okay, we'll go ahead and close public comment. Moving on to the consent calendar.
Mr. Chairman, just quickly, you should know that the frequently asked questions piece was drafted, printed, and posted weeks before the representative from CalAm came to speak with us.
Thank you. Okay. Moving on to the consent calendar. Does anyone from the public wish to pull any consent calendar items? Anyone from the board?
Chair Clark, I do not, regarding item number 2 on the consent calendar, I do not wish to pull it for further discussion, but I would like my vote recorded as a no vote on that item.
Okay.
Can I ask a question about the item itself?
Go.
So I noted that in the findings, finding number 9, it indicates that the T-Zone and Fruit Bar does not use dishes or glassware. The products are served only in disposable packages. And I'm wondering if we have erred in not saying recyclable. And I don't remember whether or not they said that when they were here, but it's certainly something I think we should really be conscious of, if not able to change it now for this group, in the future for anyone else that comes forward in this regard.
Okay. Yes, Brenda.
I also wanted to note that I voted no on item number 2.
Okay. Okay, with those two notes, is there any other items to be pulled? With that, do I have a motion to approve the consent calendar with the notes on number 2?
Second?
Motion Rubio, second Byrne. Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, motion passes. Item number 13, General Manager's Report.
Yes, this is the compliance report with the cease and desist order and the Seaside Groundwater Basin adjudication. Okay. There we go. Item 13. We are compliant with the cease and desist order, and that concludes my report.
Brevity is the soul of art.
I spread out.
Yeah, there's actually a couple of interesting things. Again, the accounting for the cease and desist order purposes, you can see it's pretty evident that we're, the actual for the period through the end of March is significantly below target for Carmel River Basin, but over target for the Seaside Groundwater Basin. And that, we talked about at the last meeting, the reasons for that. But the important thing is, in general, the actual is under target, and we are, as I mentioned, compliant. On the next slide, I did want to highlight two things. Cal-Am is successfully taking water under its Table 13 rights, despite the very dry January and February. And Sand City desal continues to underperform versus nameplate capacity and expectation, but the changes in well location and some additional enhancements haven't been complete yet, I think. Right, yeah. This is production for delivery for customer service. This is our proxy for system-wide demand. Couple of important things here to note. The total year-to-date of 4,538 acre-feet is still a little higher than last year, 316 acre-feet higher. But at the end of last month, we were actually 395 acre-feet higher year-to-date. So we're now showing signs of coming back, and that's a natural outcome of having a wetter season, less irrigation, and so forth. So, based on the end of last month, trend might have had us finish the year at 960 acre-feet over last year. Right now, that trend is coming in a little tighter. We've got a full 6 months behind us, so even if it did continue, it'd be about 600 or 632 acre-feet over last year. And I expect with this unusual, for us, April, that April might be a little better than last year as well. And at the bottom of this page, we track the 12-month moving average on, and compare it to the October production limit that's set for the full year. So we're still doing fine relative to that trigger. Turning our attention to what I just mentioned to Council Laredo, that I put my umbrella in my car an hour ago before we started closed session, and I'm regretting that move. It's raining, and it has been raining. We had pretty good rain yesterday. So the April results are not reflected here. We got just under 6 inches in March for 12.06 inches total through the year, which is still low. It's 64% of long-term average. If rain ended today or at the end of March, we would still end up in critically dry year based on precipitation. So even though it felt like a really wet March, but we're 1 inch away from just being in a dry year, and about 3 inches away from being a below normal year. So we'll see what happens with the April numbers, but it is interesting how you can be lulled into thinking all the problems are over and that we're still critically dry. We also look at unimpaired river flow for determination of what type of water year we're in. We're currently at 44% of long-term average, but we're currently in the dry zone, so not critically dry based on unimpaired flow. And we're very likely to get into the below normal zone because of what you see happening out there in April currently, and even a nominal 1,000 acre-feet a month for a couple more months. We're about 7,000 away from below normal, and pretty high likelihood of hitting that number. And usable storage, we're still at 97% of long-term average as of the end of last month. Today, we ceased further injection for the Aquifer Storage and Recovery Project. And considering that we just started in March, we got 510.71, so almost 511 acre-feet. That's our 5th highest annual storage amount. So not a home run, but not a bunt single either. I put that in. It's kind of a
Stand-up double.
stand-up double. Yeah. And I don't see John with us, but John and his group with Thomas and Tom Lindberg should be applauded because they really pushed the system pretty hard. With 5 days to go, I think we really needed it to be at about max, and they did a great job. So, and that concludes the general manager's report. Just a point of note that it was mislabeled as item 5 on your packet, but I don't think that's going to throw you too hard.
Chair Clark, I have a question.
Okay, yes?
You mentioned that this was the 5th highest year. How many years do we have on record? Or how many years did we
Yeah, it's a great question. We had a number of years that were pre-permit years, and those were small amounts and kind of testing and so forth. Once we got around to it, beginning in 2010, that was 1,111, and then 2011 was 1,117. Last year, of course, was 2,345. So those are the 3 really big ones. So right around 08, 09 is when we started running it in earnest. I'd say, actually, anybody know? But it's right around that time, 9 or 10.
So 9 or 10 years.
Yeah. And so the 4th place was 699 about 3 years ago. So this next item, I'd like Steve Thomas to introduce before we get to item 14. For those of you who know, and I think Director Clark will expand on a little bit, the California Water Reuse Association held its annual meeting here last week?
2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. But
Good evening, Board of Directors and staff and the public. My name is Steve Thomas. I am your public outreach consultant as well as the team leader for public outreach for Pure Water Monterey. And just to give you a little context of the video that you're about to see, back in 2015, the Pure Water Monterey project was awarded the Agricultural Project of the Year through the Water Reuse National Group. As we all sat and watched the videos highlighting each of the award winners, several people turned to each other and said they all seem like they're the same. And so when the Pure Water Monterey project won the Public Outreach Award back in 2016, the team decided to make the video memorable. And so we produced a video that was very, very memorable. It stood out wildly from everything else that was done. And so this year, when we were awarded the Medium Project of the Year, Medium Agency of the Year, for the 2017 conference, our team went back to the drawing board again and came up with something that had to top the previous award. And it's kind of become a little bit of an event, if you will, for the people that attend the conference to be able to see what we're going to come up with next. So hopefully we can keep winning awards so that we can keep producing videos like this that I'm sure you guys will get a kick out of. So thank you.
It was an ancient time, in an ancient land. It was 2014, and the good residents and businesses of the Monterey Peninsula thirsted for water. Their basins and rivers were adjudicated, and the dark cloud of potential water rationing covered the 7 kingdoms. So the rulers of the kingdoms came together and proposed a bold plan to work in cooperation to defeat the issue of limited water supply and state-mandated clean water. They identified 5 champions: house wastewater, house agricultural runoff, house stormwater, and house industrial wash water. Held in coalition by the triad of coin, they would see their efforts create the greatest potable reuse project in the land: Pure Water Monterey. Winter is coming, but water reuse is here.
Well done.
So Director Clark, you were at the luncheon when this was played,
Yes.
and what was the reaction?
Well, if we set the stage, it's mostly, oh yeah, I did this project, and it's, me getting up there and talking type thing. So when people saw this, they were very excited. It was quite entertaining.
Yeah, our next one will be themed on Big Little Lies. Okay, moving to item 14. This is just an update on development of water supply projects. Little reminder, this is where we're headed, all of the different water sources. And these are kind of the quantities for planning purposes, haven't changed for several years. Demand has to equal supply. Basically, we're looking at the bottom 3 on the supply chart is the assumption of 1,300 from aquifer storage and recovery, 3,500 from Pure Water Monterey, and a little over 6,200 from a 6.4 MGD desal plant. On Pure Water Monterey, all source water projects and easements are in process. The advanced water purification facility is under construction. They've been pouring concrete and moving quite a bit along. We'll talk about the conveyance pipeline. The injection wells, phase 1, filed a notice of completion, and phase 2 was, the contracts were let 2 weeks ago. And change orders and budget remain a concern. I did note that on the source water, last month there was a $39,000 change order. But the biggest place of concern is advanced water purification. Last month, about $205,000 in change orders were issued. And so we had a construction contingency of about 10% on the hard costs, and we've nibbled into that on the project.
Can I just ask a question?
Mhm.
Can you tell me who the contractor and construction group is?
Yeah, so we just let the phase 2 of the injection wells to Specialty Construction, which had both a DBE, a disadvantaged business enterprise component, and a local hire component. The water conveyance pipeline that's being managed by Marina Coast is Mountain Cascade. The advanced water purification facility is Anderson Pacific. If you've ever heard of them, they're doing some work on, I think they're doing work on your project. Mountain Cascade or Anderson Pacific? Yeah. And the source waters is a variety of different, because there's little component pieces, but we've got Anderson Pacific. Oh, that's where I had that thought. So they're working on 2 projects for this.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
And I can tell you that on the last bids, local firm Monterey Peninsula Engineering did bid, did have a DVE and a local component, but they were the 3rd lowest bidder. On the pipeline, pink represents completion. Green is the 2 weeks ahead, and then blue is prior to construction. So you can see that they've made relatively good progress coming in from where those of you who did attend the pipeline groundbreaking, that's where 01 is, up in that area. It's actually closer to the bend in the elbow, if you will, below the 01. But we anticipate that they're going to be on time. They're doing pretty well, despite ruining Larry's commute 2 Saturdays ago and crossing Reservation Road. And then on expenditures to date, you can see that pre-construction was about $23 million. And then the approved budget for the different components is listed in the second column. And then how much has been incurred to date on each of those. So we're about 13 million into the 68 million, 69 million total.
Sure. Yes. Would it be possible to add a line item on that graph there for change orders?
For what?
Change orders.
Yeah, that'd be a good idea.
And kind of keep track of that.
And then thinking about the same project costs a little bit differently, this is the funding and reimbursements. So for all of the pre-construction items, about 7.2 million came from Monterey One Water's general fund, 100,000 from the Water Master for some studies, about 12 million, 12.2 from us, and then there was a grant early on and a piece of the loan, which I apologize, I cut the footnotes off, which leaves it a little bit hard to follow. But that's the 23 million that you could see from the previous page. And then of the approved 68.8 budget, this is where it's coming from. Loan, grants, and contribution from Marina Coast Water District. Any questions back on that one? Okay. And then looking at the desalination plant and pipeline, so the final environmental impact report came out a little over a week ago. Comments or opening briefs are due this Thursday, so we will be filing a fairly simplified opening brief. We had an extensive comment letter. Most of those comments were addressed. Some of the places where they didn't address it, we've since sent directly to ESA 4 or 5 comments for factual corrections. And then our opening brief right now is focusing simply on a section on mitigation, proposed mitigations that we may not be fully in agreement with. The additional timeline that's shown here on the red bar, the third triangle, upside down triangle, is the final EIS, which did happen March 28th, 27th, something like that. And so now the focus is on getting the issuance of the CPCN. A June date placeholder is held right there. And then once that CPCN is done, they can go to the Coastal Commission, and that process can take anywhere from 6 months to 9 months. And that's your window for legal challenges, basically. If someone doesn't want to see the plant built, it'll either be a CEQA challenge when the CPCN is issued, or actually the notice of determination, or it will be something surrounding the coastal development permit. After they have those in hand, most of the other permits are small, use permit from the county and so forth. Someone could elect to just file suit over every permit, but those are the 2 big ones. So that window is probably 0 to 9 months from the issuance of the CPCN. Pipeline, remember this is 7 miles of pipe. It's basically down to the last legs where it says pipeline bridge crew. For those of you who may have been trying to get to Naval Postgraduate School or the Hyatt, it's right in front of the Hyatt right now, the trenching is. So that's, when you think about it, it's going from the Hyatt to Highway 1, that's the last leg. So this one's pretty close to on time. So as I mentioned, it's in front of the Hyatt. Most of the work right now that you can see is visible is the pipeline bridge right next to the existing Highway 1 bridge at Old Salinas Highway 68 and Fairgrounds Road. The pipe bridge side abutments and center column basically had 40 feet deep of footing poured with concrete and rebar. It's going to be supporting a lot of weight, 36-inch pipe of full of water. And that'll be buttressed or cantilevered on a pair of 125-foot long concrete pre-engineered girders, pre-stressed concrete. So that'll be interesting to see when they come in on the back of a flatbed with a crane and everything. Local water projects, the only change from our last update is Pacific Grove has now fulfilled both grants. The second grant was for stormwater capture. They use that to develop their feasibility study, which they can then use to go qualify for additional grants. So there was a letter, is it in this packet, from the city of Pacific Grove, highlighting their gratitude for the grants. Might be in the next one. Somewhere in your letters, either last month, this month, or next month. And the others haven't changed. Oh, they have. City of Seaside, we put them on notice that with that no expenditures to date, that there was a June 30 year-end window this year. They have sent a letter that you will see for consideration next month to extend by 2 years if you're willing, which I think my recommendation would be go ahead and extend. These are typically good projects. The Malpaso water, or the Odella water, if you recall, there's kind of 3 stages. The limited liability company issues an assignment agreement, records it to the deed, and that goes with the property. It's a property right that you now have this increment of water. They can choose to come into the district and memorialize that in our records with a water use permit, which doesn't really get them anything, get a property owner anything until they really have plans in hand and know how they want to use the water. So then they'll come in for a water permit once they have those plans, so we can actually count their capacity to use water and compare it to their entitlement and determine whether they can proceed based on that. We have seen to date that a lot of permits get issued for a fraction of the entitlement that they've already paid for. So I think there's been a little bit of over-purchasing that's going on. If you read the Pine Cone this last weekend, there was an article about it's going fast, and so some people have had that impulse purchase. We've talked to at least one property owner who says, well, I don't know what I'm going to do with it, but I just want to have it in hand. Perhaps either betting that there will never be a final water supply solution and it'll go on forever. I think the expiration date is 2075. Or they're blind to the fact that there's no value to that once a new water supply comes online. So if it were to come online in 2021, 2022, these entitlements are really rendered somewhat useless because there will be sufficient water for any of the building plans. The reclamation project, this is the Pebble Beach Reclamation Project. We are the water, recycled water purveyor. These are reservoir levels, so the Forest Lake Reservoir, the goal is to try to fill it during the winter before the irrigation season. The heavy blue line is reservoir levels through March 15th, and you can see it was in fact full, and it probably remains full today because the rain has 2 effects. One is it dampens the need to use recycled water, obviously, so less irrigation, but also the COD wastewater system's a little bit leaky, so there's infiltration. So when it rains, there's more supply coming into the plant. And so you can produce more to maintain the reservoir levels. So to date, last year saved just under 1,000 acre-feet of what used to be potable supply. The 5-year average is roughly right in that same range, as is the 22-year average. So it was designed, hopefully to save about 1,000 acre-feet. I think when we established the entitlement, we set it at 800, so it's exceeded what we set it at, but it's been pretty consistent in meeting those needs, and as I said, that frees up potable supply for other uses in the CalAm system. And ASR was covered in the previous report, and I can report that Deepwater Desal is still in negotiation with a potential equity funder. They've been talking to 2 different potential partners, so but very little to report on that project. And that concludes item 14 and my report.
Okay, thank you. Ralph?
Yeah, Dave, back on slide 7, where you had the funding sources and the reimbursements.
Uh-huh.
What is the timeline on those reimbursements? So they come through timely?
Yeah, they are now. They were slow at the beginning, but I think it's a little over 1 month. It's somewhere between
That's good.
30 and 45-day pay.
Good, thank
Yeah.
you.
But I'd ask that same question at Recycled Water Committee next door, because they're more on top of it. But that's what I've been told.
Okay, we're going to move on to our attorney reports from closed session today.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. I would like to tell you we had an exciting and productive closed session, but I want to maintain credibility, so it was just productive. We did discuss the 3 items on your closed session calendar. Got a report of the 6th District Court of Appeal decision on Monterey Peninsula Taxpayers Association challenge to our Prop 218 fee. And as we all know, the Court of Appeal did validate the trial court and fully affirmed the district's position in that case. The other 2 matters are the pending matters before the Public Utilities Commission and before the State Water Resources Control Board on the CDO. And as to those 2 items, the board did provide direction concerning a draft petition to modify the CDO to add additional milestones as alternatives, and also provide direction concerning the challenge to the state board's CDO, which is presently pending but on the back burner by way of a tolling agreement. That tolling agreement was to expire in July of this year, and the board agreed to join the other litigants and to further extend that agreement for a period of years so that we can avoid litigation and work cooperatively with the other parties. That concludes my report.
Yeah, thank you. Next is director's reports, including AB 1234 reports on trips, conferences, attendance, and meetings. So we'll start over here.
Other than attending the water reuse reception,
I have not attended any meetings, but I thought this would be a good time to report that the grant that we gave to King Elementary School has been used. All of that ground cover that was wasting water has been removed, and they are now in the process of putting in the new low water plants. So that's a very happy thing for me personally. I'm glad to see it.
Good. Anyone else?
Nothing other than attending the reuse project event as well.
Okay. I too attended that water reuse thing, and also earlier in the day the California Water Reuse Luncheon, where we received the award, and I'll let Mr. Stolt display over there. So
Yes, the Recycled Water Agency of the Year, meaning medium agency size, presented to the Monterey Peninsula Water Management District and Monterey One Water. Thank you, Steve, for getting our name first. And the 2018 Water Reuse California Annual Conference, which is pretty nice. We've gotten some good hardware. And this one we're living up to because all projects were under construction. The one that he mentioned for agricultural product was kind of on the fly because we hadn't really gotten project approvals or let any contracts. So it was kind of like, oh, gee, do we have to give the award back if we don't do the project? So
that one was very nice. There was probably 500 industry people there, so it was very nice to be able to show off our agency, along with Monterey One Water. Rudy Fisher was there with me, their chair. So I think that's all we have. Moving on to the next item, public hearings. Item 17, consider adoption of the 2017 MPWMD annual report.
thank you. This begins on page 173. We have an obligation under our legislation to annually adopt a report. There are a few specifics that are required statutorily or legislatively, like the disposition of any pumping charges or groundwater pumping charges, which you'll find in there. We've not traditionally used this as a really polished annual report like you might get in your mailbox from TAMC or the Park District, but we do highlight a lot of the achievements for the year through bullet points. And I think Arlene did a wonderful job of laying it out and adding graphics, and looks pretty good, very consistent with the ones we've done for the last 5 years or so. but we do need to adopt.
I'd move to adopt.
The public comment.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, you're right.
Does anyone from the public wish to comment on our annual report? Okay, seeing none, we'll close public comment. Director Byrne?
Go back to the motion to approve.
Okay, motion by Director Byrne,
I'll second.
second by Director Evans. Any further discussion of the
Just
board?
congratulations. It was a beautiful job. Thank you very much.
Yeah, looks
Okay.
great.
I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed unanimously. Okay, action items. Item number 18, consider adopt, or authorization for Prop 1 Disadvantaged Community Grant. I'll let Ms. Locke go into
Thank
it.
you. So this evening, the board is considering authorizing the general manager to enter into a grant agreement with the Regional Water Management Foundation for grant funds for the MPWMD Disadvantaged Community Needs Assessment and High Efficiency Applied Retrofit Targets, also known as the HART project, in an amount not to exceed $252,639. The Prop 1 Disadvantaged Community Grant is designed to ensure that involvement of disadvantaged communities, economically distressed areas, or underrepresented communities in the integrated region will be included in the integrated regional water management efforts. The Monterey Peninsula region has been awarded $466,000 in round 1 of the disadvantaged community funds. The grant funds are available for the Water Management District for 2 projects. The Monterey Peninsula Water Management District Disadvantaged Community Needs Assessment, which will look at determine the current drinking water and wastewater technical, managerial, and financial capacities for the local DAC, which is the disadvantaged community, to ensure long-term, safe, reliable drinking water and wastewater treatment and disposal. The HART program is will focus on primarily the city of Seaside's disadvantaged communities to provide free or low-cost installation of water-efficient toilets, shower heads, faucet aerators, clothes washers, dishwashers, leak detection, irrigation controllers, anything that we can do to assist with water savings. They will also include outreach activities that will provide education about our local water supply and circumstances, and it will reach out to the property owners, managers, and renters. The program will continue with on-site inspections, and it also kind of piggybacks on a program I've mentioned a few times called the Water Link program, which we're currently in a grant with Ecology Action of Santa Cruz. And that program is looking at more of the energy end of things. This grant will look at more of the water savings end. So what hasn't been covered by either Ecology Actions grant or programs that CALM has undertaken for their low-income customers, will be going in and doing all of the retrofits on those programs and also helping with leak repair, which is critical. So that participation will engage the City of Seaside's community members, and it will also obviously result in lower water energy use and lower bills for those customers. The administrative committee reviewed this item and recommended that the board authorize the general manager to enter into a grant agreement with the Regional Water Management Foundation. And I guess that the other portion of the grant funds is going to the city of Monterey for the Franklin Street. They have a stormwater project that they have received grant funding for. So if you have any questions, I'll try to answer this.
Does the board have any questions?
I have one. So basically, it's a pass-through grant coming from resources people to the district, and we disperse the grants. But I had a question on this one line. It says MPWMD is not proposing to be reimbursed for these services unless project costs are less than grant funding. Are those a line item in the general fund for?
Yeah, so we'll donate time,
Mhm.
but we won't seek reimbursement for overhead for that time. But we'll maintain a line item in our projects for this money. And then if you remember looking at our budget, we have reimbursement budget items, so the reimbursement will be noted that it's coming from the grant. So we'll track it as a line item, but not our time.
Yeah, it's tracked in each of the different.
So there's
budgets.
no counting of matching funds or?
No.
Right, no local match. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
I think this way we would be able to give more to the,
Right.
use the grant instead of paying
I get
our
it.
staff.
And one thing I want to point out is disadvantaged community is it's a name for a specific qualified precinct or area. There are 2 in Seaside and 2 in Old Monterey. Ecology Action, our partner on this other Waterlink project, has further identified areas that are almost DAC qualified, and we're including those in this assessment. So it's not, it's not just the 4 DAC precincts.
Director Lewis?
I just wanted to note that this is very timely. After I recently attended a Seaside City Council meeting, and to express to Seaside residents that these rebates are available and that I'd like to see them start applying for them. A few days later, I was approached by local church leaders who wanted more information about it, which I quickly provided. And they pointed out that the biggest problem that they see with their congregations is that people aren't financially able to buy the washers in the first place.
Right.
And they wanted to know if there was any remedy for that. So this
is exactly
this
that
is
program.
exactly what I needed to
Yes.
be able to go back to them with. So thank you.
Any other questions? If not, we'll move to the public for public comment. Last chance. Okay, we'll close public comment. Any other further comments from the board, or I'll entertain a motion?
So move the staff recommendation.
Okay, a motion for Mayor Rubio.
I'll second the motion.
Second, Director Evans. Any further discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed unanimously.
Awesome.
Okay, we have the informational items and staff reports. And that is all we have, so we'll go ahead and adjourn the meeting.
Thank you. Good meeting.